What's the craziest thing that has happened to you live on stage? Okay, so we had 10 dancers with me.
Reba McEntire built her career on the same stage that made country music what it is. The Grand Ole Opry was where she proved herself, where she earned respect, and where she stood beside the legends she grew up listening to. But the closer she got to that circle, the more complicated things became. Moments that should have been celebrations turned into tension. Friendships became awkward. In fact, on her induction night, one legend walked out of the building in protest. When you look back at her Opry years, you start to realize the rise everyone admired was actually surrounded by heartbreaking stories most fans never heard. Reba McEntire's rise to fame. For years, Reba McEntire has been one of the most respected names in country music. She built a career that lasted decades, sold millions of records, and became one of the few artists who could move from the radio to television and still stay on top. Her connection to the Grand Ole Opry helped turn her into a legend, and for many fans, she represents the best of traditional country music. But behind that success, there were moments when her path crossed with other stars in ways that did not always end well. Some of the biggest names in the Opry circle would eventually have disagreements with her, and a few of those moments started much earlier than people think. Reba's story actually began in Oklahoma, where music was part of her life long before she ever thought about becoming famous. In high school, she performed with her brother Pake and her sister Susie in a small group they called the Singing McEntires. They sang at local events, rodeos, and gatherings, and even recorded a local single in 1971 about their grandfather, who had been a champion steer roper. At the time, the music felt more like something the family enjoyed together than the beginning of a career. After graduating, Reba went to Southeastern Oklahoma State University, planning to become a teacher. Music was still there, but it was not the main goal yet. However, everything changed in 1974 when her father encouraged her to sing the national anthem at the National Finals Rodeo in Oklahoma City. It was just supposed to be another performance, but someone important happened to be listening. Country singer Red Steagall was in the audience that night, and he was impressed enough to offer to help her record a demo. A few months later, she traveled to Nashville to make that tape. Nothing about the trip guaranteed success, but the recording reached the right people at the right time. In November 1975, she signed her first recording contract with Mercury Records. It looked like the beginning of everything she had been working toward, but the first years were harder than she expected. Her early singles barely made an impact, and her debut release only reached the bottom of the charts. For a while, it seemed possible that the career she had just started could end before it really began. The breakthrough did not come until the early 1980s. In 1982, she finally scored her first #1 song with Can't Even Get the Blues, followed soon after by another chart topper. The success proved that she could compete with the biggest voices in country music, but she still felt she did not have full control over her sound. In 1984, she made a decision that changed everything. She left Mercury and signed with MCA Records, determined to record the kind of traditional country music she had grown up loving. Her album, My Kind of Country, became the turning point. It produced #1 hits and finally gave her the identity she wanted as an artist. As her career grew, one place became especially important to her reputation. The Grand Ole Opry was more than just a stage. It was the center of country music history. The show had started in 1925 as a radio program and became the longest-running broadcast in the United States. Over the years, it moved from small studios to the Ryman Auditorium, and later to the Grand Ole Opry House, where the biggest names in the genre performed. Becoming a member of the Opry was not something you could apply for. You had to be invited, and only a small number of artists were ever given that honor. In January 1986, Reba McEntire received that invitation during the Opry's 60th anniversary broadcast. For her, the moment meant she had truly arrived. She was no longer just another singer with a hit record. She was part of the same tradition as the legends she grew up listening to. From that point on, her career moved even faster. She went on to sell more than 75 million albums, place over 100 songs on the country charts, and collect awards from every major music organization. She won Grammys and Country Music Association awards and eventually earned a place in the Country Music Hall of Fame. By the time she received the Kennedy Center honors, her place in music history was already secure. But the higher she climbed, the more complicated the relationships around her became. The Grand Ole Opry brought together some of the biggest personalities in country music, and not all of them agreed on everything. Reba was known for being professional and respectful, but even she found herself in situations where decisions she made affected other stars in ways she did not expect. One of the first times that happened involved a duet that never came together the way it was supposed to. The tension with Kenny Rogers. By the early 1990s, Reba McEntire and Kenny Rogers were not just two of the biggest stars in country music. They were also close friends. Both of them had built their careers through the same world of touring, television specials, and Grand Ole Opry appearances, and over the years, they developed a strong respect for each other. That friendship became even more important during one of the hardest moments of Reba's life, when everything around her suddenly fell apart. In 1991, tragedy struck when a plane carrying members of her band and her tour manager crashed, killing everyone on board. The loss shook her deeply, and for a long time she was not sure how she was supposed to keep going. She later admitted that during those months she felt lost, unsure if she even wanted to return to performing. It was Kenny Rogers who helped pull her out of that place. He asked her to appear in his television movie, The Gambler Returns, The Luck of the Draw, giving her something to focus on when she needed it most. The project gave her a reason to get back in front of the camera and start working again, and she never forgot that he reached out when she needed help. Because of that, the two stayed close through the early 1990s. They talked often about working together on music, and eventually the chance came when Reba found a song she believed would be perfect for the two of them to record as a duet. The song was called The Heart Won't Lie, written by Kim Carnes and Donna Terry Weiss. From the beginning, the plan was simple. Reba would record it with Kenny Rogers, and with both of their voices on the track, it seemed almost guaranteed to be a hit. When they went into the studio, though, things did not go the way anyone expected. The problem was not the song itself. It was the key. No matter how many times they tried, the vocal ranges did not line up the way they needed to. The parts that sounded strong for Reba did not sit comfortably for Kenny, and the adjustments they tried never felt right. They spent time trying to make it work, but the more they pushed, the clearer it became that the duet might not happen after all. At that point, the project could have been dropped completely, but Reba did not want to lose the song. She believed in it too much to walk away. Instead of giving up, she kept recording and started looking for another way to finish the track. Vince Gill was brought in to sing harmony parts, and the idea at first was only to use him in the background. But once they heard how the voices sounded together, the plan changed. Instead of just harmonies, the song turned into a full duet. Everything moved quickly after that. The album had to be finished, schedules were tight, and the recording process did not slow down long enough for her to stop and think about how the change might look from the outside. In the rush to complete the project, she made one mistake she later said she regretted more than anything. She never told Kenny Rogers that the song had gone forward without him. When The Heart Won't Lie was released, it became exactly the kind of hit she expected it to be. The song went to #1 on the country charts, becoming one of the biggest records of her career and another major success for Vince Gill as well. But the success also meant that Kenny Rogers heard the record the same way everyone else did. The unforgettable moment they finally came face to face happened at the CMA Awards. By then, the song had already climbed to the top of the charts, and there was no way to avoid the conversation. Kenny publicly confronted her and asked why the duet had been recorded without him after they had talked about doing it together. For Reba, that was the moment she realized how much the situation looked like a betrayal. She explained that everything had been moving so fast after the plane crash, after the movie, and after the recording sessions that she never stopped to think about how the decision would affect him. Kenny accepted the apology, but the damage was already done. And surprisingly, this would not be the last time something like that happened. Because a few years later, another moment at the Grand Ole Opry would create tension with a legend she never expected to disappoint. The legend who walked out on Reba's induction. By the time Reba McEntire was invited to join the Grand Ole Opry, she had already spent years proving she belonged there. Being asked to become a member meant that the people who built country music believed you had earned your place beside them. For Reba, the invitation in 1986 felt like the moment her career had finally come full circle. But the night that should have been one of the happiest moments of her life ended up creating tension with one of the most respected figures the Opry had ever known, and the situation put her in the middle of a disagreement she never expected to be part of. Hank Snow was already a legend long before Reba ever stepped onto the Opry stage. Born in Canada in 1914, he had become one of the defining voices of traditional country music. Songs like "I'm Moving On" and "I Don't Hurt Anymore" turned him into one of the biggest stars of his generation, and his long career made him part of the foundation the Opry was built on. By the 1980s, Snow was seen as one of the elder statesmen of the show, someone who represented the older style of country music that many fans believed should never change. At the same time, the Opry itself was changing. New artists were coming in, the sound of country music was evolving, and the show had to balance its history with the future. Reba was part of that new generation. She respected the traditional sound, but her success came during a time when country music was reaching a wider audience than ever before. To the producers, she was exactly the kind of artist the Opry needed to keep moving forward. Her induction was scheduled for January 17, 1986, during the Opry's 60th anniversary television broadcast. Because the show was airing nationally, everything had to run on a strict schedule. Every performance had a time limit. Every segment had to fit, and the producers were under pressure to keep the broadcast moving. That meant some changes had to be made, and one of those changes involved Hank Snow. He had been scheduled to perform his signature song, "I'm Moving On," during the same broadcast. It was one of the songs the audience always expected to hear from him, and he had performed it countless times on the Opry stage. But to make room for the induction ceremony and keep the show on time, the producers asked him to shorten his performance. Instead of singing the full song, they wanted him to do only one verse. For someone like Hank Snow, that request was more than a small adjustment. He had spent decades building his reputation, and he believed that once you reached a certain point in your career, you had earned the right to perform your music the way it was meant to be performed. Being told to cut his song down for the sake of the schedule felt, to him, like an insult, a sign that the traditions of the Opry were being pushed aside. Rather than accept the shorter performance, Hank Snow chose not to perform at all. He withdrew from the broadcast and refused to go on that night. The situation happened during Reba's induction, and that made the moment feel uncomfortable for everyone involved. What should have been a celebration of a new member became a reminder that not everyone agreed with the direction the Opry was taking. Reba later made it clear that the situation made her uncomfortable, and that she never wanted anyone to feel pushed aside because of her. She had grown up listening to artists like Hank Snow, and she understood exactly what the Opry meant to people of his generation. But the timing of the situation placed her at the center of a conflict between the past and the future, whether she wanted to be there or not. The experience also taught her something she would see again later in her career. Even when you respect the people who came before you, success can put you in situations where someone else feels left behind. And in country music, those feelings can last a long time. Because not long after that, another tension started to grow. This time, not with an older legend, but with someone who understood the business just as well as she did. The rumored tension with Dolly Parton. By the time Reba McEntire was still trying to find her place in Nashville, Dolly Parton was already a star, already writing hit songs, and already one of the most recognizable voices in the Grand Ole Opry. If there was any feeling at all in those early years, it was admiration. One of the first times their names crossed paths happened during Reba's Grand Ole Opry debut in September of 1977. For a young artist, that night meant everything. The Opry stage was where careers were made, and getting the chance to sing even one song there was something most singers never forgot. Reba had been told she would perform 2 songs, and she had spent days preparing for the moment. Just before the show, though, a producer came to her with a change. Dolly Parton had arrived unexpectedly, and the schedule needed to be adjusted. To make room, one of Reba's songs had to be cut. For someone trying to prove herself, that kind of news was mildly disappointing. It was her first time on the Opry, her chance to be seen, and suddenly the moment was getting smaller. But Reba did not react the way people might expect. Instead of being upset, she laughed and said Dolly could take both songs if she wanted. The only thing she asked was if she could meet her. That moment said a lot about how she felt at the time. Dolly was the person she had grown up listening to, the person she hoped she might one day stand beside on the same stage. And for years after that, their relationship stayed exactly that way. Until rumors about tension between both women began to spread. This time, it had to do with the way their lives kept crossing through Kenny Rogers, another music legend. Both women had long friendships with him, and both had worked with him at important moments in their careers. Because of that, people around them sometimes noticed a strange kind of awkwardness when the 3 of them were involved in the same event. According to stories that surfaced years later, there were times when each of them felt a little closer to Kenny than the other one did, and that feeling occasionally created uncomfortable moments behind the scenes. One of the times people pointed to most often was during the planning of Kenny Rogers' tribute concert, which aired in 2021 after his death. Both Reba and Dolly were part of the show, and the event brought together many of the biggest names in country music. To the audience, everything looked respectful and emotional, exactly the way a tribute should feel. But reports later claimed that backstage the atmosphere was not quite as relaxed. Nothing dramatic happened, and neither woman ever confirmed there was a problem. But reports claimed that the situation felt a little tense, as if everyone was being extra careful about what they said and did. Even so, those rumors never turned into anything serious. In country music, artists cross paths too many times for small misunderstandings to last forever, and both Reba and Dolly had been in the business long enough to know that. The duet that almost didn't happen. By the early 1990s, Reba McEntire and Vince Gill were 2 of the biggest voices in country music, And the fact that both of them came from Oklahoma made fans feel like their careers were meant to cross. They had the same roots, the same respect for traditional country, and the same reputation for being easy to work with. When they finally started recording together, the results sounded natural, almost like they had been singing side by side for years. But one of their biggest hits only happened after a long chain of changes, missed chances, and one decision that nearly went a completely different way. The first time they recorded together was in 1989, when Reba joined Vince on the song Oklahoma Swing from his album When I Call Your Name. The duet fit them perfectly. It had the kind of sound both of them liked, and the performance made it clear why fans wanted to hear more from them as a pair. But the tension between Reba and Vince did not come from the recording. It came much later, when it was time to film the music video for another song, titled The Heart Won't Lie. Reba was known for putting a lot of effort into her videos. She liked them to tell a story, and she did not mind spending extra time to make them look the way she wanted. Vince, on the other hand, never cared much for filming videos at all. He preferred being in the studio or on stage, not standing under hot lights for hours while cameras reset the same scene again and again. The video for The Heart Won't Lie turned into one of the longest shoots either of them had done. Instead of finishing in a day or two, the production stretched out into 4 full days. The concept was elaborate, with costumes, sets, and scenes filmed in different locations. The story showed Reba as a Navy officer candidate and Vince as a Marine drill instructor, a dramatic idea inspired by the film An Officer and a Gentleman. It looked great on screen, but getting there took a lot more time than anyone expected. Reba later revealed that the only person who did not enjoy the success of the song was Vince, because of how long the video shoot lasted. She admitted that he never liked filming videos in the first place, and that the 4-day production tested his patience more than once. After it was over, she even promised him that if they ever recorded another duet, she would make sure he never had to go through a video shoot like that again. The comment showed how even the best partnerships can run into small frustrations once the cameras start rolling. And long before Vince Gill ever stepped into the studio with her, there was another singer whose name always came up whenever people talked about Reba's voice. A legend whose shadow followed every female country singer who came after her, including Reba herself. The ghost that followed her career. Of all the names ever connected to Reba McEntire, the one that feels the most haunting is also the one she never met. Patsy Cline died years before Reba ever stepped onto a stage, yet their careers became linked in a way that many fans still find hard to explain. The connection was built on admiration, coincidence, and one tragedy that made the comparison between them feel almost impossible to ignore. Reba grew up listening to Patsy Cline the same way many young country singers did. To her, Patsy was not just another artist on the radio. She was the voice everyone measured themselves against. When Reba started recording in the 1970s, it was natural that she would sing some of the same songs that had made Patsy famous. One of the most important was Sweet Dreams, which Reba recorded for her second album. The song became her first top 20 hit, and for a young singer still trying to prove herself, that success meant everything. She did not choose the song by accident. She picked it because she loved the way Patsy had sung it and because it was the kind of song that could stop a room the moment the music started. For a long time, Reba even ended her shows with it, singing the final lines without any instruments, the same way many singers had heard Patsy perform it. When she made her early appearances at the Grand Ole Opry, she also performed songs from Patsy's catalog, including Why Can't He Be You? To fans, the connection felt natural. Patsy had been one of the greatest female voices in country music, and Reba was one of the young singers who seemed ready to carry that tradition forward. But the story did not stop at the music. Over the years, people began to notice something else about the two women, something that felt less like influence and more like a strange coincidence. In February of 1963, Patsy Cline went into the studio in Nashville to record what would become one of her final sessions. During that time, she recorded Sweet Dreams, the same song Reba would later make part of her own career. Not long after that session, Patsy died in a plane crash at the age of 30. The accident shocked the country music world, and for years her name became part of the history every new singer learned about. Almost 3 decades later, Reba found herself connected to that story in a way she never expected. In March of 1991, she had just finished a concert in San Diego. Like she had done many times before, she ended the show by singing Sweet Dreams a cappella. While she was on stage, her band and crew were packing their equipment, getting ready to leave for the next stop on the tour. The plan was simple. They would fly ahead to the next city, while Reba stayed behind for the night. After the show, 7 members of her band and her tour manager boarded a private plane. Because of a change in airports, some of them had time to go back to their rooms before leaving. They called home, packed their bags, and then headed out to the flight that was supposed to take them to the next show. Not long after takeoff, the plane crashed into the side of a mountain. Everyone on board was killed. For Reba, the loss was devastating. These were the people she worked with every day, the people who had been on the road with her for years. In the days that followed, she tried to understand what had happened, but the details only made the moment feel more unreal. The last song she had sung before the crash was the same song Patsy Cline had recorded shortly before her own plane accident almost 30 years earlier. The coincidence stayed with her. She later wrote about that night, remembering how ordinary everything had seemed before the flight left, and how quickly everything changed. After the crash, she stopped singing Sweet Dreams in her shows. The song meant too much, and the memory was too close to the loss she had just lived through. For nearly 30 years, she left it out of her performances completely, almost like she hated it. When she finally sang it again decades later at a benefit concert for the Country Music Hall of Fame, the moment felt different from any other performance she had ever given. It was not just a tribute to Patsy Cline anymore. It was also a reminder of the people she had lost, and of how one song had become part of 2 stories that ended in the same kind of tragedy. For fans, the connection between the 2 singers has always felt almost eerie. One voice influenced the other. One song tied their careers together, and one accident made the comparison impossible to forget. Reba never called it a curse, and she never spoke about it like something supernatural. But she understood why people felt the story stayed with her. Because sometimes in country music, the past never really goes away. And some names stay with you, even if you never had the chance to meet them. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.